Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here and continue my research and interest. I started working for DCR in 2007 along the Blackstone Canal, and I learned a lot about the Irish immigrants who hand dug the 46-mile Blackstone Canal, and learned about river recovery and the health of water. And so for the past 5 years, almost 5 years, I've been here at Wachusett Reservoir learning way more about water quality, and so proud to be here and continue my research on the labor that created this infrastructure. Tonight, my regional director is here, Kelly Frieda, so when we finish the slideshow between us, which Kelly has a lot of experience working along the reservoir, so hopefully we can answer your questions. So be thinking of some questions along the way. The Division of Water Supply Protection, I am the outreach coordinator. DWSP manages and protects the drinking water for over 3.1 million residents in Massachusetts. Do you all know where your drinking water comes from? Yes. Shout it out. Okay, last time you said Quabbin, I was a little hurt. You're not wrong, but it has to come to Wachusett. Okay. DWSP is responsible for the safe storage of source waters, protection of water quality, and the management of the watersheds. MWRA, which is the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, is responsible for the drinking water distribution and treatment. So tonight we're going to talk about the workforce at Wachusett Reservoir, the stories of the workers, and the huge work that they put in, the dangers and conditions they endured. So there's a lot of superlatives when we talk about the dam. We just love the dam and reservoir, right? The largest construction project in the world. Anybody have another one? Three. What? Oh yeah, right? The commission for the Panama Canal came to study how the engineers worked on this. That's a great one. What else? Largest? We call it the largest. What's that? Oh. Hoover Dam's even bigger. Yes. But at the time, this was the largest construction project in the world. Okay. How do you feel when I say Metropolitan? Get any emotions stir up from Metropolitan? No.
I'm not sure if it includes us.
Right? Well,
maybe 1900.
Yes. In 1895, it was an exciting and a new thing to hear. The Metropolitans are coming. That meant anybody who worked on the Metropolitan Waterworks. And there was so much excitement in the local papers when the engineer for the Aqueduct department moved to Clinton. And there was a whole article about his family and his children and how they were moving into the Duncan house. So it was quite an event to have all this coming to town. But by 1897, the engineers' wives were hoping to have another nickname because Metropolitan was no longer thought of as a positive thing. So here's a photo of all the engineers. At least 15 engineers and their families moved to Clinton and stayed. So let's not talk about the engineers. Let's acknowledge the workers. The workers who mucked in the tunnels deep in the earth, scoured the soils from the valley. Smiling, at least. I love to see the photos where they're smiling. Blasted ledge, crushed rock, dug up graves, all for an enduring source of clean, pure drinking water that over 3 million people enjoy today. So they're sometimes overlooked. We don't have monuments. We don't have preserved labor camps. They're gone. But thankfully we have photos. annual reports, newspaper clippings, that we can piece the story together. These men weren't known by name unless something unfortunate befell them, an accident, a death, a crime. Then they got their names in the paper, but sometimes the names that they gave weren't the right ones. So it's really hard to track. So if I say someone's name and there's a photo, it's a best guess. It's really difficult to trace. Okay. For example, Moulton and Mahoney, the contractor, Walter Moulton, they were working on the North Dyke. He told the Telegram reporter that he does not keep track of men by name, with the exception of the foreman or the men who have charge of a particular portion of the work. The rest are known to him only by numbers, and they bear that number on the books of the firm. They don't even know like what things they bought from the commissary, the store, because it wasn't listed by item. So they're only known by numbers and money. All right, let's start with the aqueduct. Probably the most dangerous project. It was completed and opened in March 7, 1898. It was vital to get this completed as soon as possible to start getting the water conveyed from the Wachusett Reservoir to the Sudbury Reservoir. It was a distance of 12 miles, 2 miles through rock, 7 miles lined with masonry, and 3 open channel. So let's take a closer look at this map here. We've got 4 shafts and a portal. So we're going to start, shaft 1 was right at the Nashua River, close to where the dam site would be. And so the bottom line is, that's a straight tunnel. That is, and so this is showing you the hills that had to be dug through. And this is showing you, you know, like an aerial, like looking down on the map. Okay, so shaft 1, soft rock, probably pretty dangerous to dig through. Shaft 2, look where it's located, right at the corner of Clamshell Pond. So maybe that was the most dangerous, digging a tunnel so close to a water source. And then we got shaft 3, not so deep, but hard rock to dig through. And shaft 4, right along where a brook was starting. And then we have the portal. So let me give you some photos of each shaft. So this is Patrick Kane's land, was excavated 43 feet deep for the Wachusett Aqueduct, shaft 1. It's right near the dam site, so the dam isn't there yet. E.D. Smith and Company, that was the contractors. They had an earlier contract digging the Chicago drainage canal, so a huge project. So their superintendents, Winston and Jackson, came here and they hired some men on the ground, but mostly they brought their trusted labor force with them, which were migrant and immigrant, black migrant and immigrant African Americans from Virginia, tunnel workers, and also Irish laborers that worked on the same project in Chicago. That is an elevator. So there were 4 shafts dug in the ground. The hole in the ground is 9 by 17 feet. This particular one is 43 feet deep. It's said to be the most dangerous. And that is exactly what I said. That is an elevator that they're digging the tunnel, and then they're able to put the rocks that they break up on that cart and lift them up to the earth. And then they put them on a cart. This is called a dump, and it's about 100 feet. They pull the cart, and then they dump what was underground off. Now this cart has got the board off. I hope that was on purpose. But yeah, they were dumping that. Engineers worked with extreme accuracy 7 days a week because there was no blasting in the tunnels on Sunday. So it was best to do all that kind of work on Sundays. They have candles on their aprons. Pretty cool. It said that straight line accuracy variation was 1/1000th of an inch. Digging underground, right? The surveyors actually took lower pay just to have experience on such a large project, because they knew it was the largest project in the world at the time. They're willing to make a name for themselves. So they dug the ground by a drill and blast method. In the tunnel worked drillers, muckers, and helpers. They worked in 2 shifts, day and night, to get it done quickly, because it doesn't matter when you're underground. It's dark no matter what. So they worked day and night. Well, actually, the night shift really had a lot of mosquitoes and, you know, how that swarms you when you're out there trying to work at night. Yeah. For the lights, the contractor, E.D. Smith, had a small dynamo generator installed. But we're finding from newspaper reports that it didn't really work. But those are lit. It worked that day. All right, drillers. Diamond drills were used to bore out the tunnel, cutting through solid rock with the drills driven by compressed air. So here's some drillers. What they would do, instead of just blasting, they would drill 22 holes. So like that circle. They would drill 22 holes, 6 feet, some 8 feet deep, long holes, right, into the rock there. These guys are brave. I can't even go into a small cave. Each hole is charged, then packed with 6 pounds of dynamite, right? The blast is then set off 3 times. So there'll be like 6 set off. Well, they go to the top. So there's 8 people working there. They drill the holes. They stick the dynamite in the holes. Then they go up to the top. From a battery charger, they charge the fuse and set off the first round of dynamite. They go back in, set off the second round, then they do it a 3rd time. And they do that at the end of their shift, like at 5:30 at night. And there's strict rules that they have to ring the bell because work is going on at all 4 shafts at the same time. So you can't just, you know, even though it's known that at about 5:30 you're going to do some blasting, that you need to ring the bell so the people, workers in shaft 1 will know that there's going to be an explosion in shaft 2. All right, so here's a little close-up. You can kind of see. Can you see it? Yeah, there's a little fuse on that stick, and they're drilling holes in there. All right, in firing a charge, the foreman would adjust the wire. Everyone gets out. They ring the bell. That's the drillers. Here's the muckers. The men cleaning the tunnel after everything was blasted were called muckers, even though the men working in the reservoir digging up the soil were also called muckers. These men here are called muckers as well, and they're shoveling up those rocks that were blasted, putting them in carts, and pushing it along that rail, and then the cart gets lifted up the elevator and dumped in the dump. The mule, how does he get down there? There's mules at each shaft. They come down the elevator, but they live there. They're there all day, all night, right? Except on Sundays. They let them up on Sundays. The plans of the tunnel provided for a lining of the whole bottom, so it had a smooth invert with an inclination of 1 foot in 5,000. So really accurate here. Provision was made for arching the tunnel only where the existing conditions of the rock made it necessary, or where the rock was like what they call soft rock, that it might deteriorate. Next. Oh, it's just lifting up to show you the shaft. Each shaft had an elevator run by compressed air. Compressed air was also sometimes released to get the gases from the blast to dissipate. So that was also a problem, was the air quality. Here are some more drillers. You can see they've got the compressed air. You can hardly see them, it's not great. But behind them, they have those big poles. They have a air compressor drill, but they also have the poles that are helping to get the dynamite sticks in. So there's one there, and there's one there. Anybody here a geologist? I'm not a geologist, but I love rocks, right? Professor Crosby, a geologist at MIT, made detailed examinations of every shaft. He took specimens of rock all along the way, and I read that they're well preserved in the Clinton office. Where are the rocks? His reports of the results, the examinations and the specimens taken told the engineers where there needed to be wooden supports. No problem there, right? The wooden supports are gonna hold everything up. Maybe not. So this was the first cave-in. Cave-in occurred at shaft 1 at the tunnel, which narrowly, it missed. It missed, and there was nobody in the way. Yeah, nobody, no fatal accidents that time. Explosion of dynamite at 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Oh, there was an accident. So this is talking about W.B. Ferguson, who was knocked aboard from which he was standing on the elevator. So the elevators weren't that safe, right? They could, and they rode the elevators up and down. But yeah, this is one of the accidents. And he landed at the bottom with his back on the rail that the carts roll on and was sent to the hospital. We don't know. They're not, they didn't, I never found a follow-up. So sadly, that's how this goes. It's like fitting a puzzle together. Here's another horrible thing, men in a fire trap. Drillers and muckers 65 feet below the flames. So those wooden beams that are holding up the rock, if those catch on fire, it's over. So someone dropped a gas lantern at the top of the shaft, and the wood to preserve it was soaked with oil, which, yeah, so it really started quite a fire. But it was shaft 1, so they were able to ride a mule to the fire station and get some water and put it out. All right, that's a story of shaft 1. Here's shaft 2. You can see clamshell pond right there. Amazing, right? So the rock is really thick. Professor Crosby says it's safe. It's safe to dig. So there's the elevator that they dug, the shaft that they dug, and the elevator that they put up there. The engineer that lived in Clinton, what an outreach coordinator he was. He brought people to visit the shafts and tunnels. He brought people in there, right? I don't know. So there was a story that I read that he brought a group of highway businessmen and women and their wives, and they went into this, they went down the shaft and into the tunnel, and they were talking about how it was so dark, and they held on to the mule to find their way through the tunnel, and some of them just couldn't take it anymore, and they went, they were stepping in 4 inches of water. They couldn't take it anymore, and they went back up. So, yeah, that's There was a group of teachers that went down by themselves. So visitors were everywhere. Like, it was so interesting, right? Visitors went everywhere. The teachers went down by themselves, got kind of scared as the elevator was going down. One of the teachers stepped on the key that controls the air pressure, and they heard a big explosion. And so they decided, no, this isn't for us, and they went back up. And they only had enough air to get the elevator back to the top. So, but the superstitious miners kind of blamed it on them because there were women in the tunnel. What can you say? There was a horrible explosion in Shaft 2, and 4 people died, and 1 survived. And would you know that James Foley, the one that survived, was released from the hospital 2 months later, and it says here he will return to work. He will return to work on the aqueduct. But he has like stains, blue stains from where the dynamite touched his skin. All right. There was, important to note, the men in the tunnel are thoroughly disheartened over that explosion. And so a gang of 25 men asked for their time, which means they asked for their money and left. So they truly were, even though they followed Smith, the contractor, from Chicago, they truly were migrant workers. They were like, no. They asked for their time and they left, and they expected more to do. The workers for E.D. Smith went on strike once, and it didn't work out for them because there were plenty other people who wanted to work, and the contractors had no difficulty in filling the place of the strikers with new men at the rate of $2 per day. So that was what you got for working in the tunnel. All right, shaft number 3. This is where all the action was. This was on Lucinda Larkin's land. The shaft was excavated 90 feet into the ground. But you see there's new buildings there. This is where Smith, the contractor, this is the heart of the operations. They called it Larkinville at first because it was the Larkin farm. Then they called it Smithville, but some of the workers ended up in Smithville Barry, which wasn't good for anybody. So it ended up with the name Smithtown. So here it is before the head house is built. We've got buildings. You see the farmhouse in the back. New buildings for the laborers. So these rooms hold 2 rows of cot beds, 5 in a row. So 10 people can sleep in one room. The houses were put up in a slipshod way, but the Clinton carpenters were doing the work here. So some local work. Hub Plumbing Company was a contract for plumbing. So the kitchen here had plumbing and a new stove. They had a blacksmith shop. The Larkin house was rented out to the superintendents. There's a close-up of the shaft, the elevator. New housing was put up. They had a commissary store. So all the laborers bought what they needed there. But what do you think that did to the local economy? Yeah, there were so many people coming in, but they were buying all their stuff at the commissary store. Except for, there's exceptions. The local baker brought a daily wagon of bread to Smithtown, so he made out pretty well, selling loaves of bread. Even some pies and cake were delivered. The place possesses a great charm to the public, and the visitors are numbered by the hundreds. So everybody wanted to see what was going on in Smithtown. So many visitors. There's a close-up of the head house of the elevator shaft. Local men were hired as teamsters: Frank Manning, J. Duffy of Berlin, and Burke Brothers of Clinton. Mule drivers were previously employed by E.D. Smith. Like I said, they followed him from work in Chicago. They were trusted and very skilled with the mules, which people love to come see the mules. Ernie Lisby from West Indies and J.H. Duncan from Virginia. And here's the mule. People would come see the mule. 17 hands high. Is that big for mule? So no wonder visitors would come. Rejoice in the Sun, one of the articles is about the visitors coming on Sunday to see the mules, frolicking in the field. They had one day to do it. They attracted so much attention. That's that poor mule. Crowds of curiosity seekers have taken advantage of the pleasant weather of yesterday and today and walked down to the works to view the progress of the shaft and innovations of the contractors. It's so interesting. Here is shaft number 4. So here's the head house. Shaft number 4 was interesting. There was always 3 people at the top. So they had a stretcher ready. If anything bad happened, they're ready to go. That's where the power plant was, air compressors. They're pretty fancy. Let's get a close up. So they had one that was outside, but then they had this new one delivered, and that was quite a day in town when this was delivered. The water at shaft 4 kept causing problems, and they'd wear these rubber suits like here, but they had a pump to constantly pump out the water. All right. Many of the visitors at the works carry away portions of the rock for souvenirs. And in many cases, it's quite beautiful specimens are discovered. So this is the Daly house. This is where the portal was. And what's this going on? What's this guy doing? Didn't want his picture taken. He's hiding. So huge full-page article in the paper. These are all the landowners of the shafts. A great nuisance. Do something. We need police. And they're not complaining about the workers. They're complaining about the visitors or the curious people or the people who came that didn't really intend to work. They're just knocking on doors and asking for breakfast. Like, what? Yes. The farmer, Carter, here was complaining because people were trampling through his farm to take a shortcut to see what was going on at the shaft, but they were like picking his stuff in his garden and trampling through his fields. Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. I read it. I read the headline, a great nuisance. I was like, oh, here we go. Nobody wants these workers in town. But they were complaining about the onlookers. Okay. And, the novelty wears off. The last paragraph here, the contractors have given explicit orders to all their employees preventing any person in their employ to enter the shafts. So the visitors are coming in the shafts and they're sort of curious, but we can't have that going on anymore. That was too dangerous. So they put their foot down. I find this very interesting, and I was just talking to someone about being a teamster. So, would the skilled labor be necessary in the construction of the stone bridge and masonry aqueduct? It's different than finding unskilled labor. The cheap labor will not go there. The contractors are greatly hampered. They're not able to secure teams enough to keep the work going. So they need horses and they need wagons. And at the bottom here, it's like a large number have still already been engaged, but still there's a demand, and a $5 note is easily obtained for a day's work for a pair of horses and driver. But here we go. Clinton or Massachusetts residents were supposed to given preference to work on the project. And they went to look for work. A strong Clinton contingent went to Shaft 4 in an attempt to secure positions as masons' helpers. Not a bad job, but most of them objected because it was underground work. Nobody wants to do that. All right. So labor camps sprung up all along the works. So we have little shanties here. The laborers lived in shanties. They paid to live there, and they bought their own food. They cooked their food outside. So here they are over here cooking together. When they were not working, they got together in groups and cooked outside. Here's another. I love these photos because at least they're smiling, right? I try to find photos that there's a little bit of joy. This is haircut day. Yes. So really strong family, ties, which kind of either helped or hurt. It kind of helped them get into this situation where they're all together. But it made them trust the padrone, or the boss of the camps. So who was that? That was padrones from 14th century Italy, word that meant master of a ship. But the term in the United States got to be known as a labor contractor, usually Italian, but not always, who employs and exploits unskilled immigrant workers. So this boss acted as a labor contractor. He found enough laborers to fill big projects. But he asked for a commission, right? And had to get paid for food and housing. So the Department of Labor at the time, there was a paper, March 1987, kind of describing the whole system and the whole United States and how it really was an unfair practice because the immigrants coming through could not speak English, and so the padrone was able to take advantage of them. Not in every situation, right? But it was going on in all of these types of works. The agent would make an additional profit from boarding them and charge high prices for the food. And that, to make it worse, they got paid monthly. So by the first month of their labor there, they couldn't leave because they owed money. So in some cases, their paycheck ended up to be like 80 cents. I had an article about someone working for the Standard Construction Company that by the end of the month, he got 80 cents. Maybe he bought a lot of beer. They weren't supposed to supply it, but they got around it. Because again, when they wrote the books, they didn't itemize what they were buying from the store. Okay, so these are all labor camps. These are fancy horses. So this is one of the visits, coming to check on the camps and see what's going on. This is Smith and Burden had a contract with sections 5 and 6, but they lost money. They abandoned the project. So the second sublet was to the Standard Construction Company. So this might have been something checking on that, or it might have been just a curious visit. We don't have much to go on. Okay, who can tell me what's happening here? This is the nicest shanty of all these pictures, but still it's not great, right? It's brand new, it's built, they're living inside, there's probably cots in rows, so it probably fits several men sleeping inside that building. They've got wood stoves, but they have to cook outside. And he's sleeping. He's either exhausted. I looked up the date. It's not Sunday. Exhausted, sick. Maybe one of the people who doesn't have a job yet, because sometimes the boss would bring people to work like a week or so early, and then that way they can get that money from them, from the boarding and the food. While they wait for work, they're running up a bill. But most likely just exhausted here. Okay. Everyone lost money at the beginning. E.D. Smith lost $80,000 on his contract. Kasparis lost $70,000. Moulton Mahoney $30,000. And Gennaro, he lost his whole contract. Moulton and Mahoney had to take it over. His people didn't get paid. So selling things and charging board helped because they put the bid out for so low. Gennaro lost the contract. He put the bid out for 14 cents a cubic yard of soil to be removed. And it cost him over 50 cents because he had the contract to work on the North Dyke. And they ran into quicksand. They ran into like hard soil. I mean, he exaggerated, but he said it took 15 men to dig through that hard soil to get a cubic yard out. But still, he underbid and kind of lost. Not only shanties or huts, some rented, these houses are abandoned by this point all through the reservoir. So the contractors put cots in here, and they could house 60 men in a 5-room house or more. Long and Little. Let's see, Long and Little was a contracting business that resided in Leominster. I was just talking to someone about that this afternoon. They were attracted to the area to work on this project. They brought family over, and they ended up having the first settlement in Leominster, the first Irish, Italian settlement in Leominster. So here they are. This is Long and Little's camp. Their camps were just put up with a project. You can see them digging right there. Camps are right near their project. And here's their Long and Little's hoist. It's a good thing they came over because they had this great idea of this hoist to get, to move the soil. All right. There's more. This is French Hill. This house is abandoned, but it was used as bunks. And then overflow over here. You don't fit in the house, there you go. And so there's overflow at the barracks. So this one was really interesting because you see this little thing that looks like a volcano? The men have overflowed the barracks, and there was a small village of odd-looking huts around the big stacks where the main body of men sleep. More than 25 of them were up. Some are wood, and some have windows. Some are just lean-tos set on the side of a hill, and others look like just mud packed planks leaned up on a tent. They look like a little volcano, and there they are. It's like a triangle of wood, and they put sod around it, and that's a nice little home. It's overflow barracks, and there's the remains of Non and Brock, their plant, that after they removed the soil on the North Dyke. Speaking of North Dyke, how dramatic are these headlines? Lose eyes for the state. Cry for your wages. So the North Dyke, what happens when you pull all the topsoil and you're left with sand? You know, it didn't rain for days, and they're out, they couldn't breathe. It was just a dust bowl. Not fun at all. This is just showing like how deep they dug. And to a lot of the workers, it didn't make sense, right? They had to dig a trench and then fill it back up again. How much sense does that make to your, person out there digging it? So the engineer Richardson really did a lot of work with writing articles for the newspaper trying to explain why they're doing this. So it does make sense. Here's sheet piling going into that cutoff trench. That was not a contractor, that was the water board employees doing that. But everyone moving all of those tons of dirt. And they even found quicksand. And to make things worse, now they gotta dig up the cemetery. So the first day was pouring rain, right? But they had to do it because people were watching. There's hundreds of people. Are you kidding me? If somebody's gonna dig up a cemetery, how many people are gonna go watch that, right? People are out there watching it. And it was soaking wet. Everybody got drenched. The first day that they did that, 5 bodies were removed. And all the onlookers remarked the boxes were 11 years old, and they were only discolored. They were still in pretty good condition. Okay. So these labor practices, this was no fun for anybody, right? There were 6 Italian laborers went on strike 6 times through the 4 years. And here's some workers on Boylston Street. They went down Boylston Street, Chestnut Street, and High Street with flags, American flags, with someone wrote their demands, and they were demanding weekly pay and $1.50 a day. So let me skip ahead here so that we have time to talk after. So in comes the Clinton Businessmen's Association. They get word that people were trying to find a job, but not willing to live in the shanty town. So there was someone on Wilson Street that wanted a job, but he was told, oh, bring your stuff, and you can live here and work for me. But he didn't want to. He had a home. And so his position was filled with someone else. To the contractor's point of view, it kind of made sense because they'd have to stop because of rain, and then they could start right back up again. They don't want to wait for someone to come from their house back to work. But it wasn't what the contract was for. Local labor was supposed to be preferred. So Mr. Tate started an investigation. Check out, he didn't like it. He's the Businessmen Association, right? He gets a hold of this. This man was discharged because they'll not patronize the commissary's outrageous prices charged, yes. But really, the point is Clinton loses $3,000 per month in business. So the representative, David Walsh, supported this investigation, abuses at the reservoir, and an investigation was held. So the committee was trying to work on seeing if liquor was being sold, if these people weren't being paid every week, and if they were working more than 9 hours a day, and if they were required to live at the job site. And many shenanigans went on through the investigation. There were 95 witnesses. It took like 25 days. And this is a fun one, sausage served to the water board. So at the actual investigation, Tate brings some sausage that he bought at the commissary, and he funks it down. He's like, it was 2 years expired, right? But he was like, this is still good, right? No. But he made a point, right? He made a point, and he made it happen. Legislation was passed. The workers got a 9-hour day. Weekly payment law was passed that should be enforced by the Metropolitan Police. And an act was created so that they wouldn't have to live at the labor site. They could find their own boarding. So that's the Weekly Payment Act. So that really changed the lives of a lot of laborers. Now that they're getting paid weekly, they can decide where they want to get their food or anything that they needed to buy. They could shop around for their supplies. They could also shop around for jobs. They didn't have to wait till the end of the month. Now they were free. If this job was something they couldn't do, they could take their money and go to the next job. So it really changed the outlook of the laborers. They were better off. The businessmen were happy because their economy was getting some money, and it was great. So this is the last cleaning of the reservoir. Things are winding up. The great work of the laborers continued to make Clinton one wonderful place to be surrounded by natural scenery. And then this is Smithtown, not a trace. Not a trace. Beautiful. Thank you. Questions?